Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you like the new kind of studio area. I'm still kind of playing with it a little bit, trying to kind of dial some things in, but this has been a long process getting to this point. Really trying to like figure out how I wanted to do it my own way, add some flair, right? And I thought there was no better way to introduce the studio than to talk about what I think is the internet's number one most reliable place for opinions, and that's Reddit. Yeah, yeah. I wasn't serious about that. Obviously, Reddit is not the place that you want to go to get great opinions, but I was bored the other night, and I was like, I think I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about like some hot horror takes, and I was like, man, I bet you Reddit has a lot of good ones. So this video now, I chose a bunch. I don't know how many there are, but I chose a couple kind of Reddit horror hot takes to kind of just discuss with you guys, and I found some good stuff in here. So if you have any hot takes, leave them down below. I think I'm actually going to like extend this into my Instagram and have some hot takes. But don't worry, physical media is involved. We will be showing off some of that too. But I want to kick off. I have my computer here. We got some Reddit hot takes. Let's start with this one because it's pretty cool. So, Reddit user Let Me Holla At Ya said Jason versus Freddy was awesome and there should have been a sequel. And I agree, Mr. Holla At Ya. I love Freddy vs. Jason. To me, this came at such an important time. Guys, if you hear airplanes flying overhead, I'm sorry. I live apparently on an airport. This came at such an important time for me, right? This was what, 2003? So I was 13 when this came out. I know, I'm young. I was 13 when this came out. To me, this pretty much sums up where we were with horror. I mean, I'm talking in a good and in a bad sense. Obviously, coming out of the 90s, things were rough. And the history of Freddy vs. Jason is really rough too. The over a decade in absolute development hell, double-digit scripts, so many ideas. So the fact that this finally landed was such an achievement, right? And of all people, with Ronnie Yu, who directed Bride of Chucky, and essentially, in a way, like revitalized the Chucky franchise. So yes, Mr. Atcha, holla at ya. I do think this is awesome. I don't think there should have been a sequel though, and there were so many discussions of doing sequels back then. They were going to go off the comic line and bring in like Ash and Michael Myers and all this other stuff. But I think Freddy vs. Jason is a perfect time capsule for the 2000s. Even down to like the soundtrack, Mushroomhead, Il Nino, Static X, like Killswitch Engage. The soundtrack was awesome. I had the soundtrack for this on repeat, and the score equally as good. So yes, Mr. Atcha, Freddy versus Jason is awesome. I don't think there should have been a sequel, but I don't really think that's too bad of a hot take either. Maybe that's just me, but let's move on. So Widow of Brid said, and there's a lot of here, so I'm going to summarize a little bit. There is far too much exposition on how supernatural elements work within supernatural horror films to the point that ghosts feel like Pokemon or escape room puzzles. So fed up with the old newspaper research, he never reveals who the ancient demon is and all that, blah, 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 which he literally types here. Mr. Widow, I completely agree, and a movie that comes to mind for me is Smile. I really, really love this movie, right? Really, really love this movie. I'm deeply, deeply anticipating Smile 2, which is coming out in just a couple of weeks. This has, though, my biggest pet peeve in these types of movies, and it's always about 40 minutes in the research scene. And I'm going to paint the picture. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The character, it goes in a couple of different directions. They're either at home and on their laptop or on their computer, and they're typing on Google or whatever search engine the movie makes up. They're typing on Google, and they're looking up previous events, and we're typically introduced to some sort of previous event that has happened pertaining to what's happening to our main character, right? And then you have the scene where they go to the library and they have that weird like archive newspaper computer that they scroll through. The camera zooms in on things and it'll be like, brr, 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 the camera punches in and does all this crazy stuff. That's typically followed by our character then knocking on the door of whomever was involved in previous incident. And what we typically get out of that is some sort of distraught widow or family member who then gives all this exposition on who the demon is, and then all of a sudden, or the spirit, whatever, and then everything just kind of goes. I hate that. I get why it's there, but there's got to be more creative ways to tell a story, I think, than just exposition dumping over newspapers and stuff like that. But Smile does do that. But the good thing about Smile is that it picks back up really, really quickly, and it adds in some pretty good scares in between it. But it is the low point of the movie for me. But it's not really that big. But yes, Mr. Widow, I completely agree. There's way too much exposition on how that stuff works. I get it. I completely get it. I don't think it's really a hot take, but good point. Good point. So next up, this is a long one, so I'm going to summarize this one. Traditional Olive 9187 says, critics who don't love or know horror should not review horror movies. And he goes on to say, I've read too many movie reviews where the critic whines and minges about blood and gore, unrealistic plot elements in any given horror movie. It goes on and on. And this part especially, it's just lazy for a media company to put whomever on a review line because it's just a schlocky horror movie. I fall on one of two sides of this. I'm not a critic fan. I don't like critics. I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. I follow very few people who like technically review movies. There's only a couple people that I truly trust when it comes to that stuff. And even then, like, you know, art is opinion based and we all give our opinion. I just think sometimes like reviews are, I don't know. I don't think they help anything really. To me, it matters more if I see friends who aren't critics talking positively about movies. That's what drives me to see certain things. But I think we should see movies and make our own decision. But this especially, I've never been the type of person to say like, oh, you should be tied down to a genre. Like if you're a horror fan, I think you should watch dramas and watch comedies and watch all this other stuff. Like expand your boundaries. I 100% get that. It's kind of unfair to say like, oh, if you don't love horror movies, then don't review them. Because at any point somebody who doesn't like horror movies can watch something and fall in love with the genre, and that changes everything. I mean, how many times do we meet or see people on the internet who were not into horror movies, and then they finally watched one and gave themselves over to it, and then now they've learned to love it. So I do agree where I think there are a lot of times where a critic doesn't like any horror movie, and just when you sit down with the disposition of I don't like this genre of movie, you spend the whole entire time in that mindset, and you just don't really see the good in it because you're so focused on the negative because you don't like that genre. And I think that's just a little unhealthy. I don't think that's fair for the movie. I don't think that's fair for you. I don't think that's fair for all the people who are going to be reading your said review. So yeah, I completely I get what you're saying though, for sure. But I do think that there's a give and a take with that. Moving on, Slimehead says Halloween 3 is my favorite one in the series. I just made an Instagram post about this. As years go on, Halloween 3 has become one of, if not my favorite in the series. Now, in a rankings term, will this rank better than the original Halloween? No. I think the original Halloween is perfect, right? I'm just that person. I think the original is perfect. Halloween 3 really makes me wish, though, that everything we got with Michael Myers after that first movie didn't exist, and they stuck with this route. If this was Halloween 2, and then we stuck with the anthology. This makes me wish that, even though I know for a fact that the caliber of filmmaking here from Tommy Lee Wallace will not stay consistent. I'm not saying him, but you know, obviously there's going to be ups and downs, right, if they had done that. But I've really, really come around to Halloween 3 in the last, like, 10 years or so. And I think that at any given time, If I feel like watching a Halloween movie, I'm going to pick Halloween 3. If I feel like watching a Michael Myers Halloween movie, I'm going to go with the original. But yeah, my ranking for this franchise is coming soon, and I'll go more into that. But I don't. According to my Instagram comments, it's not really that hot of a take. A lot of people kind of feel the same. So, Halloween 3, favorite one in the series? Yeah, I'll go with that with you. Gator Scribe says, Giallo movies are overrated. Okay, I'm not a fan of like the overrated, overhyped. I think that's... I don't get it. If you don't like a genre and everybody else does, it doesn't make it overrated. It just means that you don't like it. Giallo is that's a tough subgenre, right? Giallo referring to the yellow cover of the books that when they began getting adapted into films, or that style began getting adapted into films, Giallo was the perfect kind of subgenre name for it. If you're not very keen to watching Giallos, it can be really tough going from like the Argento style of Giallo to the more traditional sense. Argento brings a lot of flair to his movies, and a lot of style, and a lot of substance, and a lot of violence, and that is not what the bulk of Giallo movies are. In fact, I actually think Giallo as a genre requires work to really get through, because they're mystery movies. They're designed to be slow. They have to introduce multiple red herrings. They have to build intrigue. You have to have a killer that we do not see, that wears gloves and does all these really particular things. And if you're not into Giallo movies, it's okay. But if you're into the Argento Giallo, I think that's okay too. Or you're into the Lamberto Bava Giallo, or you're into the Lucio Fulci. That's a stretch, but into that Giallo. If you're into that more hardcore Giallo, it's hard to expect that from the rest of them, because that's a pretty extreme sense of the genre, right? But yeah, I understand if you don't like it. I just don't think that makes it overrated. But that's a take, I guess. Skilosk said, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake isn't that bad. Jackie Earle Haley did a great job playing a more monstrous Freddy. I don't hate A Nightmare on Elm Street. I actually wanted to kind of rewatch it before I did this video, but I just kind of ran out of time. I really like Jackie Earle Haley in this. I think he gives his best. I think the faults with this movie are more in like the use of CGI, right? It's crazy that you can create a villain in the 80s using 100% practical, and then come 2010, somewhere around that point. Yeah, 2010. That you can't do that again. For me, I feel like practical would be cheaper. I feel like makeup would be cheaper. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm detached. But yeah, I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. I certainly think that there is a Nightmare on Elm Street entry that is worse than this one. I will say that. But yeah, I think that there was a lot of great visual here. I think Samuel Bayer did a good job with the direction. There's a lot of new stuff here. I think what they did kind of readapt, or what they took from the original Wes Craven movie, what they kind of redid, it worked. Yeah, I think it's okay. I don't think it's that bad. I agree with this. I don't think it's that bad. So, but that's a pretty hot take. Patrick Not Swayze said, horror movies are saving the theater going experience, not Top Gun Maverick or Avatar: The Way of Water. I would say it's kind of more of a fact. Sure, Avatar made a lot of money. Top Gun Maverick made a whole lot of money. But consistently all year, not just in blockbuster season, horror seems to be one of the only real profitable genres. As long as people or studios keep the budget down and allow filmmakers to be creative and create original horror, things like The Substance, they make a lot of money, and the marketing is good. If you want to look at Smile with their marketing, that brought a ton of people into the theater. So I do think horror is leading the theater going experience. That's just my opinion, though. I completely agree. Lucas Barton 169 said Pet Sematary 2 is the best Pet Sematary movie. Fuck yeah, dude. Great hot take. I love Pet Sematary 2. I love Mary Lambert's first Pet Sematary movie. I do. I think she was really restrained though with what the studio wanted out of that first movie. She didn't get a lot of creative freedom in the expression. I think she really gets that with Pet Sematary too. Edward Furlong is awesome. I wish his name Clancy Brown. Neck wound, eating potatoes. The dirt bike kill in here is awesome. I love Pet Sematary too. It is completely unhinged, absolutely unhinged. But there is this real dreamy, surreal quality to it, especially in the opening sequence with the movie set, and then at the end with the mother. I think Pet Sematary 2 rules. I think more people need to check it out. So me and Lucas Barton 169 are going to be good pals on Reddit. The movie Dr. Fool says, I think I got 2 left here. The Wolfman 2010 is a masterpiece and just as good as Lon Chaney Jr.'s original classic. I have yet to hear anyone give a good argument as to why it's supposedly a bad movie. The Wolfman. I never gave this a chance until Erica made me watch it because she loves it. I don't think it... I don't... Historically, it's hard to say, like, this is better than Lon Chaney's Wolfman. A lot of what we know is hard would not exist without those original Universal films, and I do think they hold up extraordinarily well. But I do think that, what was his name? Joe Johnston's Wolfman rules so hard. The atmosphere in this movie is incredible. Benicio del Toro. Anthony Hopkins is fucking awesome in this. The only thing that really pisses me off about this movie is the fact that Rick Baker did such a great job with the Wolfman, and we do see it. And this movie is extremely violent for a Wolfman movie. The only thing that really pisses me off is the way that they kind of like shunted Rick Baker. He put all this work into it, especially the court scene that was supposed to be all practical transformation. They locked him out and then went all visual effects with it, which I think knowing that kind of detracts from the experience of that scene. But if you don't know that and you don't understand, you're not educated as to what really happened kind of behind the scenes, and you're not even thinking about that. And I think the Wolfman rules. So that's a great opinion. That's a little bit of a hot take saying that it's just as good as Lon Chaney Jr.'s, but I get it. I 100% get it. So last one, and this is a big one, right? Check this out. Base Jester says, as movies, Dr. Sleep is more entertaining than The Shining. The Shining introduces several supernatural elements that don't pay off with any narrative significance. Now, I'm going to assume he's talking about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I'm also going to say that The Shining is in my opinion, an extremely difficult book to adapt to screen. I think the most accurate adaptation is going to be Mick Garris's, which is the miniseries. I do love Stanley Kubrick's Shining, though, even though Stephen King hates it. I do love that movie. I think that movie is just technically incredible, right? If you want to look at a movie that uses sound and visual, everything that makes the movie-going experience so good, The Shining is that. Mike Flanagan, when he announced doing Dr. Sleep, I hadn't read Dr. Sleep. My wife did, and she loved it, and she was like, oh, I wonder how he's going to do that. I will say the director's cut, the intended cut of Dr. Sleep, is a near perfect movie, I think. I do love this movie. You're looking at, The Shining, so much has changed in filmmaking and in audience expectation of what audience enjoys from, the 70s to now. And I think a movie like The Shining now, if it was made today, I don't think it would work as well. I don't think audiences would enjoy it as much. It's very calm. It's very patient. It really relies on building like just this incredible amount of tension that then explodes off the screen. The use of the sound when Danny's riding his trike around, going from the wood to the carpet, and we do that for like 6 minutes. Like, it just builds this incredible atmosphere that's very, very, very. It leaves a very uneasy feeling, at least to me. Dr. Sleep is a more, I would say, like, there's a bigger story to be told here, and I think that there's a lot more characters, there's a lot more involvement. I can see that. Yeah, I would say Doctor Sleep is more entertaining than The Shining. It really depends on what your relationship to The Shining was. It played constantly in my house when I was a kid, so I really come to love it. But I also love Doctor Sleep. If you had to say like, what do you like better? I kind of put them on equal grounds. I think both. I think both are just as good. Now, when I talk about Doctor Sleep, I'm talking specifically about that director's cut. I've never seen the theatrical cut. I didn't see it in theaters, so when I got this, I went right to the director's cut, and that's all I've watched. But I love Rose the Hat. Ewan McGregor is great. The stuff at the end, returning back to the Overlook, is great. I really have like a good emotional attachment to all the characters here. I think Mike Flanagan has a fantastic visual sense. This movie looks great. So yeah, I get that. That might be a hot take. I don't know. Would you guys consider that a hot take? But yeah, that's it for right now. I would love to continue doing this and continue talking about this because I think it's really interesting just to hear like what people think about stuff in the genre. If you have a hot take, drop it down below in the comments. Let me know. I'm going to be putting up a thing on Instagram. I'm going to be gathering a whole bunch of hot takes from the community, and I'll do another video. But if you like this style, comment down below. Let me know. Let me know what you think of the new setup. And yeah, have a great day. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.